I'm on the bus just like crying, you know, like, what are these presents doing in here? Like, we told you we didn't want the presents, and they would just be sitting there cleaning, and I was like, this is so awkward. Okay, everyone, we are back. Hopefully that you have come here from part 1. If you haven't watched part 1 of my what it's like to nanny for a super rich family in Paris, watch that first. It's kind of like the setup, talking about like how I met them. Yeah, just like kind of like the setup of what I'm gonna get into now, which is kind of some of more like stories about them, like why it was such a nightmare to kind of work for them, and just like some crazy things. So anyways, I mean, there was just so many things that were like, I mean, obviously like the lifestyle is so crazy. Like they asked me to go to London with them, and I said, oh, I probably can't because I have to work. I'm like an English teacher. And they were like, oh, well, we can just get you a doctor's note. And I was like, no, you know, I'm not gonna, no. Like there was just always things like that where they were always just, I don't know, whatever. Just like things like that, like always kind of trying to like game the system for themselves. And I think it was really hard because I think if you want to be a nanny for a family like that, it kind of has to be like your #1 priority. And this was a side job for me, so I just think they were very used to like them saying like you know, jump, and then people saying like, okay, how high, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so anyways, so there was, I mean, like I could literally go through so many instances of just like be like, this is not, it's not okay to treat people like this. It's not okay to freak out at people like this, especially people that are there just like literally just help you and make your life better. I mean, I didn't even receive like the full brunt of it. The other nanny who I worked with, who's also Filipino, and there was definitely a big part of me that was like I was the only white person in this like staff of helpers, and I was like, is there a little bit of racism going on? Maybe. So the other nanny definitely got the brunt of the whatever. Like it would be so awkward. We would be in there, and that was, we would have to make dinner and then clean everything up like spotless, and the mom would like come in and be like, other nanny, like, why did you do that, you know, like what? And I would just be sitting there cleaning, and I was like, this is so awkward that I was like, that I'm just having to listen to her like yell at this other woman because of something so stupid. I'm like, if you want it done this way, you do it. It's your children. And sometimes the mom would like we'd be making dinner and cleaning up, and she would just be like sitting at the table on her phone, or she would just be like in the other room on her phone, you know? Like I just think she was obviously very used to people just like waiting on her and waiting on her children. And the other nanny told me that she was an absolute, because the other nanny would travel with them, God bless her, to like Morocco. They went to go skiing, you know, all these things. And the other nanny would travel with them, and she said that the mom was an absolute monster to the staff, to the managers at hotels. And I was like, well, that plays, yep, that's exactly what you'd think. I mean, she was just horrible. And the other nanny, when she traveled with them, she would have to share a room with the kids, or like the babies would have to sleep in her room, which I just think is like, so it's just like, she's a woman, like she's her own person, like you can't afford to like get her own room, you know, whatever. I don't know. I mean, just her stories alone like blew me away. She's like, Maddie, you don't even know the half. It was whatever. So anyways, so something else that happened, like just like another freak out. And okay, so I show up, and the mom is in the car with her daughter, and they're like, oh, we're gonna go pick up the boy, and we're gonna go for hot chocolate. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had like rush to get there. I always had to rush going from school to the nannying house, which made it a really big stress. which I feel like I should have gone into that earlier, but there was also a transportation strike while I was nannying. So I would have to like take like a Lime scooter to, like, I would have to take the one into Paris and then take a Lime scooter to their place. I would be waiting for the bus for like literally over an hour trying to get home, and they knew there was a transportation strike going on, and they were never like, oh, we can get you an Uber, or, whatever. I was like, okay, great. Okay, so getting back into the story, sorry, very scatterbrained. So the mom's like, oh, we're gonna go for hot chocolate, and I was like, oh, okay, should I just like come with you? And she was like, yeah, just come with us. Which it was like, it was nice, and it was like delicious hot chocolate, whatever. But whenever stuff like that happens, you're just kind of like, why are you bringing me with you? Like, you don't need me, don't waste my time, whatever. So we're talking the whole hot chocolate. We're talking about like, yeah, tomorrow maybe, because the girl really loved to bake. We're gonna make a cake tomorrow. It's gonna be so fun. Like, yeah, like right after school tomorrow, like, let's make a cake. It'll be awesome. And so the next day, we're in the kitchen, like getting out the cake ingredients, and the mom comes in and like goes ballistic on me and the girl, and is like, why are you guys making a cake? Like you need to come in here and help me decorate the tree. And I was like, oh my God. And the girl and I both just like sit there, and we both like look at each other, and the other nanny was like, why did you guys make a cake if you didn't ask? And we were like, no, we talked to her about it yesterday, and she said it was okay. And it was crazy. Like just like that exemplifies very well what would often happen, is the mom coming in for just no reason and just going ballistic at us, and would just like, whoa. And like I said in the beginning, like I could definitely have some good times with the mom. She was a very like cool, like she had great style. The apartment was done up so well. She added this really cool wallpaper while I was there. And it's not like I couldn't enjoy her company, and I don't know, it just sucks because when I first met her, I was like, wow, this would be a great like resource to know in Paris if I ever want to try to get a job. They're a very powerful family. Like this was definitely someone that I could have looked up to, but just turned out not. That I just like, no. Anyways, there was another time when like one of the most annoying parts of what I did was, so I was like responsible for making sure that the kids had all the supplies they needed, which I just felt like they should have been responsible enough to be like, oh, I need a green pen because my pen is out of ink, or like whatever. So the mom would come to me and be like, his desk is an absolute mess. He doesn't have anything he needs, whatever. So I would like, they had this huge like stockpile of school supplies, of course. So I would go and like, I went and got the bin of supplies, and I brought it down, and whatever. And I set it on the girl's desk, and I was like, okay, boy and girl, come, you need to get all the supplies you need. If you're missing something, take it from here. If you need a pen, let me know and I will get it. And great. So they come in, they're looking around, they're like, yeah, it's good, it's fine, whatever. So I'm like, great. So I take it and I put it back, and 5 minutes later, the mom comes to me and she's like, I checked their things again. They still don't have what they need. And I was like, I literally just like got everything out and told them to take what they need. Like, and I tried to explain to her, I was like, we don't, especially like in my, I don't know, like we don't have these like, in France, like I find that they're very like picky about the supplies and what you have to write with. And in the US, I mean, as far as my school experience, it was never like, you could pretty much use whatever you wanted as long as you had like a pen and a pencil, like maybe like a red pen for correcting, whatever. And the mom's like, it's a green pen, yelling at me. And she's like, when I say I need something done, it needs to be done. No excuses. And I was like, all right. And I don't know why that one upset me so much, but I think it's just because it was so stupid. Like, we're literally talking about school supplies, and your children can't even like regulate if they need a pen or not because you have coddled them. I almost like felt sorry for them. I mean, somewhat, because they were so coddled, they couldn't even sit down and do homework by themselves. Like, they needed someone to sit next to them, so that would always cause a huge argument who I would sit next to, because they were so like used to having someone like with them at all times. They couldn't do anything by themselves. It was crazy. Also, the boy got really bad grades. He was not doing well in school. He would like forget to turn in projects that we had just done together. Do I want to tell this part? Yeah, I do. One night they were having this like big dinner. It was like a big deal, and none of us knew what it was, like what was going on. And the mom told me that it was for like the director's daughter of a school they wanted them to get into. And I was like, of course. Like, this is so just like typical rich people shit, you know, like, I don't know, it was just funny. Like, it just like could not have been more of a caricature of like rich person, like, oh, we're gonna have them over for dinner so our kids can get into it was like a bilingual school that I guess is really hard to get into. It must be like a private school, and I don't know, whatever. And I was like, of course this is what's gonna happen, you know, whatever. So that was just another, I mean, like I said, I could just like rattle off like little examples of things that were just like infuriating, you know, whatever. So basically, one of the main things that happened that like really upset me, and now when I look in retrospect, and even when I tell the story, I'm like, okay, it doesn't seem that bad, but I think it's like any au pair or nannying story, it's like you have to know the family, you have to know what it's like to work for someone and to just be like so belittled all the time. And it's like you aren't really, I don't know how to explain it. It's like you just have to understand, like, it's hard to explain like what it's really like mentally all the time. But anywho, so I will explain. This was like the main zinger of a story that really upset me, and I was like called Kira crying after this. Like, it was a whole thing. Anyways, let me get into it. So basically the full story is this. Okay, so the boy had a birthday party. This was somewhat near Christmas. And first of all, the birthday party, still a transportation strike. I had to like take a Lime scooter. It's in like December, so it's cold, whatever. So I finally get there. I'm like running late. There's like all these gifts, and I'm taking all the gifts and putting them upstairs because they all met in the lobby. We had to take these taxis to the trampoline park, and there wasn't enough adults for an adult to be in every van. So, and I was in a van by myself, and I was like, oh my God, like, and I was like trying to, and they're like, oh, can you direct the driver to go? And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, so we go to the trampoline park, whatever, they jump around. They had sushi for dinner, and all of the kids were like, I'm still hungry. And I was like, yeah, no shit, because you've been jumping for 3 hours and you each had like 2 pieces of sushi. Like, just like order a pizza like a freaking normal person. So we get back from the birthday party, you know, whatever, fine. So the next, I think on Monday, one day, I don't really remember. It's like the next week after the birthday party. And I was doing something in the back bedrooms, you know, whatever. I walk out, and the mom and the grandma I really liked. She was funny, like a classic Parisian, sophisticated, intelligent, just like a woman, you know. I really liked her. She was very funny, always very kind to me, you know, whatever. Just giving you some context. So the grandmother and the son are opening his gifts and like trying them on, and the grandmother is like sorting them into piles, and she's like, oh, you know, she's like, okay, take these back into the boys' room, and you know, whatever. So I was like, okay, and this is the thing, is like, I view the grandmother as like an authority figure. Like, I think she knows what's going on, you know, whatever, fine. So the grandmother, you know, whatever. So I take the gifts back, and then we go on with our evening. I prepare the dinner. The mom and the dad comes home later. So the dad worked obviously full time, and he would come home in the evening. He did not seem very interested in his family. That seems so harsh to say, but like, that's just my observation. I don't know if I can say that. He just like was not as hands-on with the family, and maybe that's part of what stressed out the mom so much, is because she like felt this like responsibility, because I mean, 4 kids is a lot, and they were all under the age of 12, you know. I don't know, but the dad was like, I just never like connected with him, and like occasionally he would come to me after and be like, oh, do I need to pay you? Oh, do I owe you some sort of money? And I'd be like, oh no, the mom took care of it, you know, whatever. But anyways, at this point, so the other nanny left for the Christmas holidays, like early. I think she went to the Philippines for like a month. That was the worst month ever. Someone else came and helped, but it was like, I don't know. Anyways, so they're like, oh, can you watch the babies for a little bit? We need to talk to the boy because he's like really, you know, it was like the grades and all this shit, you know, whatever. So I'm like, oh my, yes, of course, like they were really cute, but there was the thing of, that would happen often where like I would end up watching them, helping them, and I was like, it's not really my job, but whatever. So like, oh, can you watch the 2 babies for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, sure, of course, like we'll read a book or something while we talk to the boy. And so I get the girl and the twins, they're a boy and a girl, I don't know if I said that. So I get the girl, and I'm like looking for the boy, and I'm like, oh, he must be back with his parents, which it was also really hard to ever get them to like come away from the parents, because they they like are obviously, I just feel like there's a lot of like attachment issues, probably because their parents were never with them, it was only nannies. Anyways, okay, so I go back in the boys' room, and the little boy's in there, and I'm like, oh, you know, come on. And the mom and the dad just like pounce on me, and they're like, what are these presents doing in here? Like, we told you we didn't want the presents. And so this is what pissed me off, is the boy was just sitting there, and he didn't say anything like, oh, like it was the grandma, and like I didn't know, you know, like he didn't defend me at all. And I was like, all right, thanks. So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, like there must have just been like a mix-up. I didn't specifically blame it on the grandma and the boy, because like I was like, I'm an adult, you know, whatever, it's fine. So I'm like, oh, there must have been a mix-up, like you know, whatever, I'm so sorry. You know, basically just kind of like, how can we like fix this, you know? And the mom, their dad, like, you need to find the receipts right now. And I was pretty sure that the grandmother had taken the receipts. And the thing is too, is like, this is a super, like, I don't, like, if they didn't want the gifts, they could have, I don't know, like, it's just like, they could have donated them, or it's like, it's not the end of the world, you know, it's gonna be okay. He doesn't really need more things, so it's like, it's not like he needed to exchange it, you know, whatever. So they're like, you need to find the receipts like right now. So I go back out into the living room, and I'm like frantic at this point. I'm like, oh my god, look at the receipts. But I think I was so stressed because I knew that I was not gonna find them. So I'm like looking for them, and I'm like already starting to freak out, you know, whatever. So I am looking for the receipts in the living room / dining room, the big like grand room, and I hear this loud crash. And I was like, well, shit. The next thing I hear is the mom absolutely wailing. Like, sounds like someone has just died. Like that kind of like sorrowful. And I just stood there for a second like, oh my God. The next thing I know, the mom has the baby in her arms. He's like 2.5, running into the kitchen, and the baby's like crying, you know, whatever. And I see he already has this like huge thing on his forehead. And I was just like, oh my God. So the little girl, my ward, had come home late, and so I had made her a quick dinner, and she was in the kitchen eating by herself. So I go in there, and the girl is like, what the hell? Like, oh my God. So we're both sitting there, and I had no idea what to do. Like, I was like, I don't know if I should go in there. I don't know, like, whatever. The next thing I know, the dad comes in, and he goes, Maddie, when we tell you to watch the babies, we mean watch the babies. And I said, okay, and he goes, no, it's not okay. And I was like, no, I like, obviously I didn't mean like, it's okay. I meant like, no, like, I understand, you know, whatever. And just like, I was like, oh my God. And then once after that, I was like, I don't know if I should, like, what should I do? So the mom, this whole time this conversation's happening with the dad, the mom is wailing. Like, I thought we were about to get in an ambulance and like go to the hospital. That's how bad the situation seemed. So we're sitting there with the girl, and the girl starts crying because her mom is crying, and I was like, oh my God. Okay, so the girl finishes her dinner, and she's like crying, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna clean up in here because I didn't know what else to do. So I just like cleaned up everything, and I was done cleaning, and I could still hear them like crying in the living room. And I am like picking up every single like ounce of speck of food because I was so like nervous, and I'm just sitting in there like waiting. I'm like, should I go home? Like, because I mean, at this point it's way past my like time to be there, and I'm like just kind of standing there waiting, and the mom comes in, and she's like, okay, Maddie, like, seriously, we need to talk about this. Like, this is not acceptable, you know, whatever. And I was like, and at that point, that's when I said, I'm sorry, but like, you asked me to go search for the receipts, so I went to go search for the receipts. And she was like, well, obviously looking after the babies would be your #1 priority. And I was like, it was until you told me to go look for the receipts. And then I said to her, I was like, I also, like, I was not responsible for the gifts being open. Like, it was your mother who told me, who like gave me the gifts and who made it sound like everything was okay. I'm like crying at this point because I'm so just like shook by this, all the emotion, the mom crying, the dad, like, I'm like crying, mom's like, don't cry, like, there's been enough crying, you know, whatever. And I'm like, just like, I think when someone tells you don't cry, it just like makes you like, so I go in the little like laundry room where I keep my stuff, and I'm like putting on my shoes and like getting my jacket, and I'm like crying, and the dad comes by and is like, how do you say like your fault in English? And I was like, if this man is about to yell at me again, I'm gonna freak the fuck out. And he was like, no, like, and the mom told him, and he was like, no, like, it's not your fault. And I was like, but you just told me that it was, like, in the kitchen like 5 minutes ago. So I mean, so I'm like literally crying, like still crying. I leave, I call Kira. I don't know what I expected Kira to do in this situation, but I just like needed to like tell her. And I'm on the bus just like crying, you know, like, you know, everyone's kind of like, what the hell, you know, whatever. So I get home, and I was kind of expecting the mom to like text me and be like, you know, are you okay? I didn't receive a text for like a couple hours, and then finally the mom texted me and was like, I spoke to my mother, she explained, like, I'm really sorry about the mix-up, you know, whatever. And I show up to work the next day. I show up the next day, didn't want to go at all. Like, I was like, I'm gonna quit, like, for sure, you know, no doubt about it. I show up, and no one acts like anything has happened. It is business as usual. like the baby's, you know, the lump has gone down, you know, whatever. The grandmother, when I see her, she doesn't even say like, oh, sorry about the mix up, you know, whatever. It's like just like business as usual. Like this shit happens all the time, like whatever. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I continued to work, and at that point I was like sure I was gonna quit, but I just feel like once you get into the groove with someone, I was like, I don't know, whatever. So I ended up not quitting, and I stayed with them. And then of course around, well, I mean, when I came back from Christmas, it was, people were already talking about the coronavirus, and people were saying like it's gonna get really serious, which in the beginning I was like, oh, you know, who, no, it won't. I was so young and innocent then. We get the call, or not the call, but the message goes out while I'm there that they're gonna close schools, and the mom was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out, you know, we'll see what happens. And so on Monday, the mom was like, oh, I don't want you to come right now, because also, like, I was taking public transportation this whole time, and it's like just like not very safe. And the mom's like, oh, you know, don't have to come. And the other nanny, God bless her, she was living with them full time. She was sleeping there, taking care of all 4 kids basically, while the mom and the dad were at home also, mind you. So whatever. So after like a couple weeks, so the other nanny is quitting. She's like, I cannot do this shit anymore. So she's quitting. So I get a call, and the mom had been like checking up on me, like seeing how I was doing, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm fine, you know what. And I think the only reason she was doing that was because, so she calls me and she was like, we wanted to offer you if you would come like stay with us during this time for at least like a couple months or like a couple weeks. And I said to her on the phone, I was like, I just really can't, because my boyfriend and I live together, and I was like, I don't really, like, I don't want to leave my boyfriend alone for like 2 weeks during such a strict confinement where you can't really go out, and I just think it would be bad for him mentally to like be alone. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. And she was like, well, if you want, you could like take our car and take it back and forth. Like I would like take their car and drive it home at night and then drive it there in the morning. And I was like, you don't even know me like that, like what the and I obviously ended up not doing it. And I think a lot of people, whenever they heard that I declined, which I was I mean, if I wasn't still getting paid for my teaching job, I probably would have done it, even though it would have probably killed me. But I was still getting paid for my teaching job, even though we weren't going to school. And I was like, I am not in a financial place where I need this money. Like, I will be okay. And I think, but even so, I think when people were like, oh, like some people were like, oh, you should do it. And I was like, I don't think you understand. And I don't even know if I've fully explained like what it, like the stress of working for them, like how every single day I went there and I was so stressed about what we were like, about what was gonna happen, like would I have to do this, like everything. I don't think people understand like what that's really like. And so I obviously ended up not doing it, and haven't heard anything from them since. So yeah. And I'm sure there's like little details I'm missing, or yeah, I don't know. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what it was like to work for a super rich family in Paris. I mean, there are just like so many other little things that I feel like I could have even gotten into more. If you have other specific questions about nannying in Paris, au pairing in Paris, I do have a video about au pairing, but if you have other questions about specifically nannying, anything like that, let me know if you want. I could make a part 3 answering any questions that you have, but it was a very interesting experience. I don't regret it specifically, but I think one of the main lessons, I mean, okay, if you could take away a lesson from this, I would definitely say when you go to interview to be a nanny, like definitely come with very specific questions about like what your day is going to be like, and just also don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and say like what you don't like, you know, whatever. Like I accepted 12 euros an hour. I tried to do 15, but they were like 10 and I was like no, but I feel like I should have even tried for like 13 or 14. But yeah, so just like also keep your options open, try to interview different families, you know, whatever. Maybe try to have some more specific references other than just like a Facebook comment. But so I'm gonna wrap this up because this was also another long one. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this is interesting or helpful. I don't know. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next video. Toodles.